Adopted it more than a year ago now and are implementing it and really trying to focus on improving the school district and meeting student needs. And our budget reflects those objectives that are in the strategic plan. Okay. Oh, I guess I have to. Okay, I'm advancing it a different way. So, a look at our enrollment. Average class size K-5 is 22, up over the last, if you look at the last 5 years, that's up, a couple of students, maybe up to 3 students on average, through cuts that we've made through the years, but is stable from fiscal year 26 currently. K-8 average class size 21, same story there. Up a little on average from 5 years ago, but stable at this point. High school is a little, it depends on the offering. So, advanced placement courses have lower class size. General core courses have higher class size. It's acceptable class size at the moment. We have 12.2 students to 1 teacher. We have 3,251 kids currently, and we're projecting that to be pretty stable for the following year. We've shared this information before, but we've updated it for the latest data from this year. Our high needs population is now remaining fairly stable at about 43%. We're glad it's not going up, but it was 29% just 11 years ago. So it's a significant increase to the needs of our students in the Dartmouth Public Schools. And you'll see that low-income population has gone up about 10%, a little more than 10% over that time period, but does seem to be leveling off at about 28, 29%. We're hoping that goes down, of course. And then students with disabilities has a steady climb from 13% up to 22% over that time frame. So that really is the story of the how our costs are driven, is meeting the needs of students with increasingly high needs. Per pupil spending, we're total per pupil spending of $19,335. The state average is $23,000. We're $3,800 below state average. We're 263rd of 319 districts in spending, and you can see the various other areas being teachers, insurance and benefits, administration, operations and maintenance, and pupil services, all below state average, some very significantly below, such as insurance and benefits and administration and operations and maintenance, all of which are, more than 30% below state average in terms of our expenditures. Staffing, similarly, we're below state average in terms of, this is staff per 100 students. It's a metric that the Department of Ed puts out. We're below average in each of those categories. Slightly below in teachers, significantly below in paraprofessionals. We call them educational support professionals here in Dartmouth. Below in leadership, student support, clerical, and technology. So, I know we wanted to talk about fixed costs, and I think that this slide, while some of these costs are not necessarily entirely fixed, are the key factors in the creation of the FY27 budget. So, contractual salary increases for our teachers unit and our nurses unit, 3.5% increase in fiscal year 27 planned, plus folks moving up on steps. We have 11 steps in the salary schedule, so that has an impact. And then our education support professionals, who are significantly underpaid, receive 5% increase in fiscal year 27. So when you look at the 80% of our budget that is staffing, we are looking at about a 5% increase on the salary side. So that's going to be the key factor that you're going to see in a minute when we look at the next slide. But special education contracted services, 171,000. A number of these, so this line and a number of other lines are really focused on meeting key student needs, and are impacted by the increased needs of students and the increased number of students with increased needs. So these reflect reality of what we need. They're not things that we want to do necessarily. Like, we don't want to spend more money on maintenance and utilities, but the reality is if we're doing things correctly, we should be. And yes.
Jim, I have one question. These sped services, contracted services, would this be OT, PT, behavior? Because
Yep.
then later on we have tuition. So is outside placement part of tuition?
Outside placement is part of tuitions.
Okay.
Yes. So.
What does that mean?
So if there's a student that we can't serve in the district, for instance, if a student had a significant special need, like they were blind, it may that their best course of education may not be something that we can provide in-house. So they go to a special school. The town is responsible for paying for that. So those are the types of situations. But there's a variety of programming depending on the high needs of the student, and there are a lot of specialty programs throughout the state to meet those needs where we may not be able to build those specialty programs because we might not have the pool of students to support those programs and all the staffing that's required. So.
Thank you.
So special ed contracted services is services for students that are outside of what we can provide with our own staff, and they're increasing. So there are therapies and treatments that we need specialists in the district to help provide. Substitutes, this is a reality. Like we just our attendance since COVID is throughout the state. The state just published a document on it. They did a study, and attendance of staff is worse since COVID. That's probably not a surprise. It's not a surprise to me, in that during COVID, we told people to stay home when they were sick. Before COVID, we never said that to anyone.
Drag yourself
ever.
in.
So and is it better that they stay home when they're sick? Well, probably, because then they're not getting the 25 other people in that classroom sick. So at any rate, we need to increase that budget to address that. Instructional supplies and nursing supplies are on the list. They haven't been increased since 2019 at all, not a penny. And we know what we're all dealing with in real life at home in terms of inflationary cost pressures. I've just not increased them and tried to get by, but the reality is that we need to step up and come to grips with the new pricing structure of the world. So some other areas, key areas: transportation, special education, and regular education. Also a problem that's not a Dartmouth-specific problem, but significant increase, $762,000 increase, 16.7%. And we are doing our best to mitigate that, but have limited control. The special education portion of that is a lot, and really it just involves transporting students to the type of placements that we just talked about in terms of tuitions. Athletics and music area, really athletics, music, and maintenance and utilities, the next three lines, really just trying to do what is right for the students in the district and the buildings in the district. So we hope to be able to fund those lines appropriately, maintain the buildings, fund the activities that our students participate in. Tuitions we talked about. Unfortunately, they are always going up at a rate higher than our budget in terms of what the state sets the rate of inflation for out-of-district placement tuition. So they set that annually, and it is always higher than what we're looking at, and we have an increase in students. And then the last thing is the staff moved from school choice. So last year we have another slide on it, but we came up with the idea that we were going to gradually wean off of school choice. So by $245,000 a year for 5 years, and then get to the point where we were spending about $700,000, which is about where we've got coming in from school choice. So before I move on, do we have thoughts, questions?
My thought was just to let you go through the whole thing.
Okay.
And we'll come back.
Yeah, we can come back to it. So we do have recommendations built into our budget. Education support professionals, those are folks who assist staff and students in the classrooms. You saw that we're significantly understaffed, and it shows, especially as we've seen increases in class size over the last 5 years. We really need additional support in the classrooms, and so we've made that recommendation. RBTs, I probably shouldn't use acronyms all over the place, and I apologize, but registered behavior technicians. So registered behavior technician is an education support professional who implements behavior plans. So they have specialized training to implement behavior plans with individual students or groups of students. That those behavior plans are created by someone else called a board-certified behavior analyst, and we have 2 of those in the district, and these folks would help implement those plans. So, again, higher
That
needs of
means
students.
They're each paid 117, or
No,
they
that's the total.
divided by 2?
That divided by 3.
Oh, 3. Okay.
Yep. They're ESPs. Our ESPs are not
Yes, you can
particularly
see
high.
$30,000 for the,
Yeah. Adjustment counselor at the middle school, we have 1 for 850 students, and really, just that's not the right staffing ratio to be able to accomplish what we need to with our kids in grades 6 through 8. Job coach at Atlas. So the Atlas program is the 18 to 22 program at Dartmouth High School. It serves students who are unable to meet the graduation requirements in 12th grade, and we are responsible for their education through the age of 22, students with special needs. So that program we created 2 years ago, and it's been very successful. We have 10 students in the program right now. If we were sending those students out, those 10 students would cost in tuition more than $600,000 a year, and we would be providing transportation. We do it in-house with a small number of staff, but next year we will have 14 students in that class. The goal of the Atlas program is to get students ready for the next stage of life. when they turn, when they turn 23, they're out of the program. So they need to learn life skills and get out in the community, do grocery shopping, volunteer activities, jobs, and a variety of other experiences. So that's what the program does, and we need more hands to do it. Obviously, it's $39,000 cost for those 4 additional students would be probably more than $300,000 worth of cost. So a special ed team facilitator. So the team facilitator position assists students and staff in terms of special needs, in terms of the special needs program of the school. We have one right now split between the high school and middle school, and we really need a higher ratio on that. Maintenance staff, we would like to hire an additional maintenance staff member. We have 5. It's not enough for our buildings, and we would like to continue to maintain these aging buildings as best we can. I think we do a good job, but I do think that we can't do enough with what we currently have. Human resources, we had lots of discussion about this over the last couple of years. So it is, we're a big department, 600 staff, and basically the superintendent and I, and the superintendent's assistant are managing human resources. And none of us are trained human resources folks. We do our best, and I think we do pretty well, but it's an area of need. Technology staff, we're just understaffed in this area, and we have a request for a technician to assist our group. Athletic coordination, we hold the biggest events in town, and we would like to organize coordination. That would be a stipend position spread out over the activities in athletics throughout the year. And that would probably most likely be a staff member, existing staff member, probably a teacher, who would be performing that job after hours. Elementary instrumental music, we cut that program a few years ago, and we would like to bring back instrumental music lessons in grade 5.
How many folks are in the technology area altogether?
So we have our technology director, our data person, our network person, and 2 technicians. So
Are the technicians like help desk for the kids?
yeah, help desk for everything. Help desk for everything, basically. Yeah. So some of the things that we didn't build in, behavioral specialist, that typically is a board-certified behavior analyst, which I talked about a little in relation to the RBTs. We have 2 in the district. We weren't able to fit that into the proposal. Special education teacher at the elementary level and a reading specialist at the middle school were all things that have a lot of value to kids, but we didn't build them into the budget. School choice spending plan. I won't spend a lot of time on this other than to say this is a continuation of the plan from last year that we agreed upon to gradually decrease $245,000 a year to get to the point where you see in fiscal year 31, 32, and 33 where we're expending about $700,000 and bringing in close to that. So the hope is that we get to that point, and then obviously the reserves will be gone at that point.
Jim, what is strategic plan implementation? Like, what does that use for?
Mostly high quality curriculum materials and professional development related to high quality curriculum materials. So, yeah.
What is revenue?
Revenue is the money we get from students attending Dartmouth.
School choice?
So, with school choice hasn't changed since the 90s. The rate, we get $5,000 a student. I had written to Representative Markey about it and hoped that there would be some movement, because it doesn't cost the state anything. It costs the community that is sending students. So I thought maybe it would be logical to adjust that rate from $5,000, but it hasn't been. We do, if the student has any special needs, there's an adjustment for that in terms of, if they,
What they require.
yeah, depending on what
And
they.
does preschool tuition go in there too?
No, preschool is a separate,
Its own-
separate
Okay.
program, yeah. So what does all that mean in fiscal year '26? We have a budget of $55,431,558. The key budget factors, so that list on the other page that we saw is $2.7 million for 5%. Then the $245,000 for school choice. And then the budget recommendations, $768,000 for a total of $59,226,287, or 6.85%. And this is what it looks like from year to year and broken down by category. You'll see about a 5% increase in instruction, 11% in administration, that's the HR director. Maintenance and utilities, 10%. Other services, 12%, that's mostly transportation. Tuition's 9%. Medicaid, I didn't talk about, but it is important because it generates revenue for the town. We do Medicaid billing where some students are Medicaid eligible, and we bring in about $300,000 a year in terms of revenue. But there is cost to generating that revenue, and we need a bit of an increase there.
It's very time consuming as well.
It's not a fun job.
Paperwork, no.
It's not a fun job. I had put this stuff on here, and I didn't update it, so I apologize. But obviously, we've already had a couple of these at the top. But this is today, our March TBD, 19th Budget Advisory Group. We have Monday night a public hearing on the budget, and the Select Board have agreed to join us, which we're excited about. And then we have another school committee meeting on April 13th, town meeting. I'd imagine some other things in between here, but that's sort of where we are. So I'd be happy to
Great, thank
talk
you.
specifics.
Thank you, Jim. I think, obviously, the goal of this particular committee and the reason that it was set up was to educate, inform citizens about, the budgets of the different towns, but even more about the money, some of the reasoning behind capital allocation, and outside pressures that you may not see in a number, but you will notice that the departments bring them up. And that, I think, goes across all the different departments. As Jim was talking, I was trying to get the list together of questions that have come in to me as chair of this particular committee, and some of the questions that I had also. I guess I could start unless somebody has any specific questions right now. But I thought, an overall review of exactly what Jim's presentation would look like, and then some questions about this, and then other departments, things more for Gary and Cody, I think I have at the end. First thing for me is the school choice. School choice, Jim and I have spoken about this. We met last year about it. I think, the limit of $5,000 per has been low. How many years has that been since the implementation?
Since the implementation, it's the original program was $5,000. It talked about it as it relates to per pupil spending. Mm-hmm. But then they didn't build in any mechanism to inflate
Right.
the cost over
That's
time.
been since 1991?
Yeah,
was
not
it?
in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, so say 1991, 92, that limit hasn't changed. When Jim brings that up to the state level, the answer has been, and you can correct me, but when I asked the question at the state level, the answer to me was your tax rate's too low. You're not taxing your citizens enough to cover these budget items. And we're not, we wouldn't consider that, specifically for the town, but statewide, because we see that a lot. So, okay, That's the answer I get back.
No town is charging enough taxes, so they can't raise that school choice?
They will not look at increasing the school choice. And Dartmouth, and Jim alluded to it, is in a particular situation where we're receiving, we're not spending. So the issue politically is obvious. You know, you have cities like New Bedford that spend a lot more money on school choice than they receive, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Right? You know, Worcester and throughout the state. So, you know, the lobbying dollars and the calls made by the larger communities and municipalities, I think outweigh any change to that limit. So I have stopped chasing that dog around the yard.
Could I?
Right?
Yeah, could I chime in for a second?
Please.
So I think that the answer that we do get when we talk about overall funding, so not just school choice, but overall funding from the state, and when we talk to our legislators, is, so in terms of Chapter 70 funding, and I would imagine on the town side, the general government funding, is that our tax rate is low, and that is our problem. And we ask about other things, but the legislators really won't entertain those because of our tax rate.
And, you know, just a reminder to those that are watching that the establishment of this committee is not a Get the Schools committee. You know, we're not looking to penalize departments because they happen to have big budgets. You know, big budgets are what they are. You know, they normally, because they serve a greater population, have a much more expensive outlay, or they're heavy in labor. That is not the problem of a department head. However, there are questions that are going to be asked of the school committee and other departments to make sure, on behalf of the taxpayer, that we are keeping as much pressure, downward pressure, on the cost to the citizens as possible. I think that's, you know, particularly the job of this committee. So, a couple of other questions, Jim. The Chapter 70, you know, you got the response that I received from the state on Chapter 70, and it goes back to the tax rate again. However, have we ever had a formal request for a recalc? Or what's your opinion on that?
Well, so the Chapter 70 formula in the state, so I testified at a Department of Ed run hearing where they went around, they had listening hours around the state. And they're putting together a report from that. But what this...
When was that?
That was back, let me think, November maybe. It was in Freetown, Lakeville.
Yeah.
So, but they haven't issued the formal
Report
yet.
Yeah.
But what the findings of the report are going to be is that the Chapter 70 formula is a broken mechanism for most communities. It supports the gateway cities, and the unfortunate part of this is that for a long time we were one of 100 or so minimum aid communities in the state, where what happened was they basically would only give us a certain amount per student per year of inflationary increase, usually $25 a student. It doesn't amount to much. And that's why if I had, I should, you know, I could add that slide. It's very flat, Chapter 78. So now there are almost, I think there's more than 250 communities in the state that are minimum aid communities. So now we're not alone. Nobody cared when we were, you know, 100 because, you know, they were focused on the larger communities. But now the formula results in so many communities being in the same position that I think they are taking it seriously and are going to look at the Chapter 70 formula, but it takes an immense amount of political will to revise that formula the right way and to address special needs costs, to address the fact that there's an inequity. And I know that there's a lot of needy students in New Bedford, like right next door, right? But their Chapter 70 funding has increased significantly. Ours has not increased, and our needy student population has increased dramatically. So what are we doing for the neediest students in the Commonwealth? We're doing nothing with the Chapter 70 formula.
There's no formal, is there an avenue, a formal avenue for a municipality to challenge the calculation that they have?
I'd like to know how the rural districts, they made motion. How did they make movement on the Chapter 78? So those Weston Mass just got a bump last year, I think, was their first year of having a new formula.
Yeah, there is a rural aid component that those legislators were willing to advocate for. And it's small, but it's something. And there is a growing sentiment amongst the minimum aid communities that, you know, we need to put pressure on the legislators to do this, but all of the votes, I mean, there's more votes in other places that are getting more money. So,
And when a
matter of-
legislator
yeah.
is, speaks on behalf of both Dartmouth and New Bedford, it's a little bit difficult to, it's not the same issues.
Sure. No, we definitely don't have the same issues, although a lot of our kids have the same issues.
Right.
So-
What I'm thinking is, that, you know, we got one community, they're talking to one community that doesn't want more money going out,
Yeah,
and one community that wants more money coming in, potentially from the same community.
right.
So I have a question.
Sure.
If you had to guess, when do you think there might be some movement on the minimum aid community relief that,
The one thing that we're seeing, and you know, Cody and Gary, and we spoke about a little bit about overrides in the Commonwealth. There are more and more operational overrides relating to school funding so many more than in recent years, and I think the success and failure of those overrides will potentially decimate education in some communities, and I think at some point the state will have to address it when they see conditions that are poor in communities that traditionally are not used to that.
all right, so what I'm hearing, I think, is that there'll have to be a string of 2.5 overrides for a number of communities that fail, that have to impact their individual school systems in towns negatively before the state will do anything about changing Chapter 70. If that's the case, then I think that's probably, I have no idea, years away from now. And therefore, to fix this as it relates to Dartmouth, if we agree that the budgets are growing beyond what we can finance by 2.5%, that we have to fix this or mitigate these rising costs some way ourselves. I don't know what that, I could go on, but I suspect there are different ways we could do that, but we're never going to be able to close the gap, I don't think, without improving Chapter 70 funding.
Well, one of the things that I heard when we were up at MMA was a push by a number of people to have the state raise overall from 2.5 to 3 for everyone. And that would help every municipality, some, but if you're going for, these different municipalities that are going for an override and failing, and many have, this would at least see if there's any support, and it would be actually easier if the state did it.
Yep.
and then we all benefit, than a failed override.
The problem is, just comment and then I'll be quiet. I think over the last few years, the success rate for overrides is about 58%. And the issue we find ourselves, I think the issue we find ourselves is we'd have to have a couple of overrides and there to close this gap. And therefore, the ability to do that, I think, is a lot lower than 58%.
Janine?
Jenny?
In that discussion at MMA about the state raising, going from 2.5 to 3, what was the general feeling or reaction to that?
Every municipality clapped.
It's
I mean, we wanted it.
Very unlikely to happen.
But-
for the
It's a very
legislature.
political.
Yeah.
I mean, think about, we're talking about 1980. What's happened between 1980 and now? And this isn't the first time that the legislature has been approached to move that. This isn't the first time that communities in Massachusetts have seen downturns, pressures on the budgets. But I think Jim made a good point when he talked about, that level of failed overrides was X 10 years ago. Now that's probably tripled. So
As of
is
last
that
year,
going
it's
to, right,
58%.
is that going to now put pressure on the legislature to say, listen, there's something wrong here, and we need to fix this, internally at the state, at the state level, because it's not working on the local level, as Heidi mentioned. It needs to be, and it's just not. And it really, I think the way you're going to get a lot of that is from the communities that are getting state aid already. The Fall Rivers, the Springfields, who could benefit probably even more from this.
Right.
It's really a collaborative effort throughout the state. It's not just a Dartmouth going at it. It's multiple communities that need this.
I'll bring up one point, if I may.
Yep.
I think the other reason I raised this point is the chances of the state fixing it for us in the foreseeable future, I don't think is very great. So I think what we have to do as a community is try to figure out how to fix it as best we can and mitigate the issues that it causes us.
So more specifically, Jim, because we could sit here and debate the state budget all day long. So the changes to the needs of the students, right? We're seeing a significant increase there and starting maybe to level off a little bit according to the numbers. I think it's important to ask the question. It's not mine, so I'll give it to the person who actually sent it to me. But changes to categories, additions to particular demographics. Has the state mandated the types of individuals that are categorized in those numbers, like Atlas? Did Atlas change, and the types of individuals or the situations they're in, have those situations been added to the needs categories? That makes any sense?
So are you asking if the students in each of those areas, if the criteria has
If
changed?
the criteria has changed for how you
No,
get to
so-
that number? No.
No,
Okay.
no. What we're seeing is
The number of-
students with needs, so,
I think it goes
10
through
years
state
ago.
mandates,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, I don't think this is about the state saying we need to do something different or more for students that we didn't do something for before.
Yeah.
I think this is more about more needs of kids. And
So it's not a question of another
Right.
unfunded state
unfunded
mandate.
mandate?
So-
No, because I think
Changed
the Atlas program, just to be specific on that one, when we were tasked as an education to educate a particular model of student up until their 22nd birthday. What changed is us, the school department, looking at, do we educate them in-house or do we outplace them? And then the numbers of children that fit that category and how can we better serve them. And having seen the Atlas program, because I'll be honest, when I first heard about the Atlas program's proposal, I thought, why now? But having seen it, not just on our walkthrough the other day, but I've internally spoken to both the teacher and gone in to see the program, I think it's fabulous that we take this initiative to educate our students, these Dartmouth residents, the children and grandchildren of Dartmouth residents within Dartmouth High School through their 22nd birthday. And as Jim said, provide them with these life skills so that they can go out into the community and find a job and potentially be more independent. That's one specific thing. I think the lines of how we define high-need students, and I think this is important for folks at home to know, is our, Jim, I don't know if you can go back to that slide.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
Is the number of families that are now in the,
The Atlas program?
in the low income. If you look at that, I mean, in 2015, we were 18.5, now we're 28, we had a bump. Now, 21, 22 was impacted because that was the COVID year, and there were a lot of things that, people had lost their jobs and things like that. So I can understand that bump, and now we're back over at 28. I think there are people, and these are only low income of our students. This doesn't tell us how many low-income families they are in the town. So these are just families with children in the school. I think people would be surprised to know how many families, how many residents in our town fall into that category. So take that number along with the population that Matt Dansereau works with through the Council on Aging as our outreach person when he tries to get, services, mass health, veterans benefits, all these benefits for our folks. We have a much higher number than that, and I think people would be surprised.
I did some research a while ago, about a year ago, and I think it's about a third of
Which is-
folks in town, which is a lot of people.
Which is a lot of people, which I think is kind of stunning.
35,000 people, roughly 34,000, and a third
Yeah.
of those are.
So when you look at the yellow line, which is students with disabilities, and you see how that has increased, I don't honestly believe that that there has been a wider swath of trying to capture students with disabilities, but I do think when you're in the buildings, it's noteworthy the changes of characteristics in our learners
Yeah.
and our
Is
students.
it safe, Is it safe to say that, Jim, on this graph, if you looked at the high needs, that COVID was a direct result of additional high need students?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were seeing it in the community, like, you could see it in the community pre-COVID, right? You could see, I mean, when you go from 30 to 35%, okay, that's only 5%, and considering we're at 43, you don't think it's a lot, but going from 30 to 35% is a significant change in terms of student need in the community, never mind going all the way up to 44% with the COVID bump. So we were definitely seeing that increase. I mean, you can see the income issues pre-COVID
So
were there.
high needs qualifies, captures the low income, the students with disabilities, but also ESL students. So it's,
Yeah,
It would also-
theoretically,
it would also include
if
people that were, that were not low income. It would be everybody.
Yes, special,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so high needs, does somebody actually have to qualify? I mean, how do you qualify for high needs?
Well, so the only thing the only thing really on this calculation that you qualify for would be a IEP, an individual education plan, and that would mean you're a special needs student, so the yellow, a student with disabilities, in terms of the yellow. So
how's
the
how
blue.
are we capturing, blue?
Right, so the blue is determined primarily by participation in any state program for assistance. So SNAP, different funding programs that support families. So when a family qualifies for some form of assistance, they are put into a database, and all of the information regarding their students comes to the state.
It's not based on income.
It is
Based on if you
based on
qualify.
income.
Each of the programs is a constituent that are.
No, just low income is based on,
But you qualify as a low-income person, puts you in that low-income.
Yes,
group.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, I guess what I was asking, if I didn't say it correctly, how do you become a high needs student? Because you're in that low-income group?
So, good question. So the gray line, high needs, is actually so some of these students could be the same student, right? So a student could be low income and special needs. They could also be, and I didn't put a line because it would be busy, and we have very low incidence, a student where English is a second language. We have very low incidence in the community of that. It's not a significant driver of cost, so it's not included here. But any student who falls into the low-income special needs or English as a second language categories would be in the gray number. So some of them will be in both blue and yellow.
Well, I think I heard you say that to get in that, besides if you are low-income, participate in one of those programs, somebody in the school system evaluates
Yes.
them and places them in a high-needs category.
Correct. Places them in
Some kind of-
individual education plan, kind of gets you on the yellow line there in terms of having a disability.
I mean, in retrospect, if COVID didn't happen, those two, the high needs and the low income, could probably now be trending at around the 30s. Maybe 30s on the low income side.
where we were way back.
Right, and in the high needs. It'd be interesting to see in communities across Massachusetts if this is the case, and I'm sure it probably is, because it affected everybody pretty much at the same level. And, it's just, it's very interesting to see that they're both almost identical,
I was
low
on,
income and high needs.
I was on a Zoom call last night with, through Leslie College, and with educators who are across the state, and we are working with trauma-sensitive populations, and we're seeing across the state right now, and we're attributing a lot of it to the COVID and the aftermath, is unregulated students, behavioral issues. Unregulated, so they're unable to self-regulate, and that is causing a big impact, and having, some background in education, just a tad. The RBTs, which I know were mentioned here, primarily, we ask, I know they work with an autistic population, but it's also behavioral needs, trying to get students to regulate their bodies to become learners. And it seems like it's across the state. People are saying this uptick and a big change since COVID. And now these COVID babies are now in as kindergartners, and seems to be a big need.
Janine?
Just to clarify, Jim, so if someone falls in the low-income category, are they, do you determine anything about their needs beyond the fact that they're low income?
Well, I mean, so their needs are not based on income, obviously, and so every student is, we try and address the needs of every student individually. So while the yellow line is specific in terms of an individual education plan that's created related to a disability, there is not the same type of determination based on low income, but it is a good indicator of issues that are that we're facing in the community and that impact students at school. It's,
I think it's general to say that a low-income student would not have the same benefits at home as a child in a non-low-income house, especially for educational opportunities.
Maybe.
But they might. But this was a important number for us to get because that dictated which children would get free lunch. And so that's really why we would try to capture that. Right now, we've been fortunate because the millionaire's tax in Massachusetts has gone directly to fund all breakfasts and lunch for all students across the state. So it's not as important, but it is something that I know way back when I was tracking data for the school that I was employed at, I would take a look at who receives free and reduced lunch and what other services do they also get. And I'll be honest, there was a correlation with the services that they also needed.
So for data, let's get back a little bit more specific. So the enrollment numbers that I see are in a downward trajectory. However, that's the total figure for current year. What are you seeing on the inside of the system through the grade schools? And how is that going to impact total enrollment going forward? I know the needs are, the enrollment might be a little bit lower, the needs are higher, but what are we seeing going on?
yeah, I mean, I think the sort of the three key pieces of, if you were to draw three lines, you'd have these lines of increased need of students, you'd have decreased staff through the years. So our class size has increased because we have either reduced staff or reallocated staff to meet the high needs of students. And I suppose that the increased needs, decreased staff mean more pressure on individual staff in the schools, needing more support, and low staffing ratios are a problem for us. And so, I mean, that's the trend. So we need more staff to support the kids with high needs, and we need more staff to support the kids in just every classroom.
All right, so how is it affecting the outcomes
We're doing pretty well.
compared to, surrounding towns?
Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We're an above average. I mean, the beauty of what I think we've been able to accomplish with, spending in the bottom 15% of the state, is that we're providing an above average educational opportunity for a cost at the bottom. I think we do that because we have a very committed staff. We have more than half of our staff live in Dartmouth, so live and work here, pay taxes here, own homes here, are integral to the community, and are dedicated. And we also do it because they get paid less than people in surrounding communities.
What about attendance and truancy, Jim?
Attendance of students?
Yeah. How is it?
It's something that is a problem here. It's a problem statewide. It's an area that we really want to, really are focused on, and it's similar to what I was talking about before. Since COVID, it has become an increasing battle in terms of attendance of students. It's something that we're focused on. It's part of the strategic plan.
Jim, and sorry, Chris,
That's okay,
I
go
too
ahead.
had received some information, and numbers, for example, in 2006, 2007, that was the peak of enrollment in Dartmouth Public Schools of 4,306 students. And now we're about 1,000 students less than that. And in 2006, which I think we may have opened, 2002, we opened the new high school. And that was 2,400 students across the district. We have fewer students. The student-teacher ratio from DESE in those times, so if I look at 2006, we were 15.9 to one student, and now we're at 12.3.
Yeah.
So that's,
I think education has evolved since, in the last 25 years fairly significantly. I think that the need for staffing as it relates to individual student needs is something that is very different from 25 years ago. And, you look at our staffing ratio as it compares to other communities in the state, and it's still low, so they're even, so yes, it has changed for sure. But the model has changed, and the thing is that we also had, in the teens in terms of high needs students back then, and now we're at 30% more than that.
Do you have the total number in that? Do you have the total number of teachers now?
So we have about 270 teachers right now.
In that you're saying has decreased over the years?
So we have mostly reallocated. So for instance, in the last 5 years, we have reduced the number of sections of elementary classrooms significantly. And the result of that has been increased class size. But at the same time, we've also shifted those positions typically to special education positions because of the increased needs of kids. So the direct answer is that most of our reductions have resulted in shifting of resources to meet individual needs of
So
kids.
the numbers stayed pretty steady.
Pretty steady.
Is the budgeting done the same way as other departments in town? Is the software the same?
So the school department has has a separate software package for budgeting. So like, I don't want to get too into the weeds, but there's a account code structure that is uniform throughout the state for education. So if there's any accountants interested, I'd be happy to show you what that is. But it's very specific.
Yeah.
So where the town accounts for our budget on the lines that are voted at town meeting, which are only a couple of lines, we have hundreds of lines in terms of detail, because our reporting to the state needs to be by school, by type of expenditure, and very specific as it relates to operating budget, grants, and so forth. So
Well, I guess the basis of the question is, I know that finance has tried to get all the other departments to report, their inputs in forecast in a very similar way. Am I right, Gary? We've tried to get everybody to kind of report the same way in all the departments.
Yeah, so Jim uses it's the same vendor,
Yeah.
but it's a different, I guess, program within that vendor. So we use Munis, and it's a Tyler product that they also use, Infinite
Visions.
And we use the regular general ledger that's provided. So it's a little bit different. And we had looked at this, I think maybe last year, the year before, because our auditors actually brought it up. Why aren't we all on the same platform? And had made a comment in the audit, accordingly. So we looked at it. It would be a big, undertaking to try to merge this. Not to say that communities don't, but some of the research that I had done, a lot of communities are on the two separate platforms.
All right, so that's all well and good. You know, you don't want to spend money if you don't have to, but I guess the concern is the reporting that you receive from the schools adequate? You know, is it in a similar format? I'm sure that we can pull whatever data you want out of the system, but is that information, does that come to the finance department? So, you know, we're kind of all on the same page as far as forecasting goes.
Yeah, we don't get it in the format that we have it in, but if the request is made, we could get that from
Okay.
the schools.
All right.
It would look different, but I'm speaking for Jim, but we could get that data
Okay.
if need be.
Yeah, we report in a much more specific way in terms of our accounting system, so like,
Yeah, think
When
of it,
we
think of it
send
as
it
a
to
string.
them, it's
Think of
only
it
a
as a
couple of
string of
lines.
account numbers. Their accounts
Yeah.
go out even further on that string.
Have you been in a need for additional information from their budgets in the past?
Well, you know, as Jim mentioned, when the budget is voted at town meeting, it's pretty much 3-4 numbers. That's what gets voted on. I know that it's printed out in their budget package, the level of detail. We don't get that on an annual basis to that level of detail. That's not forwarded to us.
But
we,
school committee has it. That's who
the
votes
school
on it.
committee has it.
Right.
It's visible on their website, I believe. Jim puts it on part of the budget package. But formally, no, we don't get a.
All right, well,
I don't get that.
I guess the overall question is, if you needed something, you could request it.
Yes.
You could lay it out. Essentially, what I'm trying to figure out is if we can lay out and get rid of some of the questions on school budgeting, and line it as we do with all the other departments. If there's a need to do that, then great. I'm sure that we can pull the information or request the
Yes.
information and have it filled in the same way. I just don't know whether it's a thing or not. You know, whether it would be helpful to, you know, the finance committee, or if there are questions from the finance committee about data that is on the school system side that is not in the same layout as all other departments.
Yeah, it may look different, but I think the categories, as far as the categories may even be different too. But if that level of detail was ever requested
Yeah.
by the finance committee or administration, we would then ask that from them.
Jim, the new positions that became available this year so far,
during the school year?
during the school year, the question is, how many normally during the year do you run into that you have to replace, and are you having difficulty replacing those?
There's a few positions, particularly in relation to special needs, that we found very difficult to fill. I mean, as I mentioned, part of the reason that we have a 3.5% salary increase for our teaching staff built in to the fiscal year 27 budget is we were hoping to be able to make up some ground in terms of our competitiveness in relation to the other communities, surrounding communities. I don't really think that that's happening with 3.5%, but we tried. So I think what we've seen more is that newer teachers are less likely to stay long-term than they were. I think that's maybe the way it is in the world now, that in terms of people taking a job where they hope to be in a position for 20, 30 years, I don't think that's as prevalent. So
Let me just interrupt you for a sec. So that's an interesting point, because when you look at average salary throughout the towns, and you look at Dartmouth, that does not take into consideration the tiers, right? So maybe if there's a problem similar to what we're doing with class and comp now on the town side of the budget, is that something that on the school committee they have to look at?
yeah, we have problems at the bottom of it. We definitely have problems at hiring new staff. That said, we're a good community, good place to work, good school district, and generally speaking, we're able to fill positions. We might have 10 positions during the school year that change on, which is more than we'd like, because you do invest a lot of time and effort and money in terms of professionally developing staff, but,
Can you think of specific situations where we missed someone that the school committee or the administration really would have liked to have hired?
Yeah.
And they couldn't get there?
yeah, I mean, so years ago, we started, talking benefits early in the process, before we got to a
Yeah, to
finalist.
eliminate. yeah.
Because we were getting to finalists and they'd walk away.
Right.
So I applaud the work that Cody and Gary are doing on health insurance. I think it's fantastic, and I hope that, it's something that helps us be competitive in terms of our benefits package. That coupled with the salary, so people are taking a pay cut to come work here, that's a tough one for most people to choose.
When you build the benefit side into it. Because the salaries that DESI reports,
Yeah.
like I said, they're average numbers, but they look pretty competitive. However, when you throw in the benefit side, and that's why I give these guys credit for taking this up through the insurance committee, to try and put as much pressure on that program as we can, to try and make it as competitive as we can, because I think, the teachers have been heard as far as the benefits package. I think, everybody understands that. And you have to stay as competitive as you can. You have to be careful. You have to be careful as a town because, on the commercial side of the insurance, I've run into that issue before. If you're giving it away, be careful what you get. You're gonna get a lot of participation, and it's gonna drive your costs right through the roof. So it's a very delicate balance between trying to take care of the people that are currently on the books, in making their positions as competitive as possible and getting a good product out of it. Go ahead.
Sorry,
No problem.
I have a hard stop at 9:30,
Okay, yep,
just so we can.
yep. Let me see. So you're not having trouble on the salary side, it's mostly benefits that you're running into problems with?
Salary side, to a degree.
Yeah. The
You
paras
know,
I get.
But, oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's probably our biggest area of turnover is the education support professionals, paraprofessionals.
One of the things that you run into in the commercial world is that there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees in jobs that you get 3.5% a year. It's just, it's only in the public side that we see these things. So there are a lot of people that are taxpayers that are gonna go to the town meetings, that are gonna, debate some of these issues, hopefully soon, that are gonna bring that sentiment to these meetings. So, pressure on those numbers has to be held.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing too is the candidate pools are much smaller than they used to be. So,
That drives costs, right?
yeah, and typically, like, we're able to get good teachers to come.
Yeah.
But typically, they're experienced, and they come with a price tag attached. They might be at top step in some other community and want to come here because it's a nice place to work in a good community, and sometimes they live in the community, whatever. But that is a big difference for us than our old hiring pattern, which was, we attempt to get new talent, inexperienced folks, but with great potential, and that pool of candidates isn't
It's drying,
coming here.
it's drying up.
Is it just smaller because people are not becoming teachers? Or?
I think part of it's that, and part of it is that, our low end of our salary scale isn't great, and if health insurance costs are high and salary's not great, doesn't make us the place to come.
So I know the class and comp is on the town side. What are we doing on the school side about that issue?
Yeah, we've never done one of those studies. I know what it would say, but so we when we were negotiating last year, we have a database that we were able to pull data from all over the state in terms of our teaching contract, and yeah, I mean, it shows that we're not average. I'd like to be average.
I like to be average too. I think I've said that in a public meeting.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the highest guy in
I
the street.
agree.
You want to be the lowest.
I
You got to
agree.
be in the middle
I'd
somewhere.
like to be average.
Other problems for attracting new teachers, and this isn't a Dartmouth problem, this is a state problem, is a new teacher, so you're thinking someone that's just graduated and now they come in. And within their first 5 years of teaching, they must also get a master's degree, if they don't have one, before they can be committed in year 6. And you have to think about that, is you're thrown into this very new experience, and you're creating lesson plans and keeping up with those daily demands, plus you have to take courses. Now, we're fortunate that our town offers $1,000 a year towards your courses. But to get your master's in 5 years, you got to take more than one course per year, and you're outlaying more than the $1,000 is not going to cover it to get your master's degree. Also, think about, you are 22, so you're 22 to 27. What else are you doing as a 22 to 27-year-old? You're not just correcting papers, working on your own papers. You probably also have a social life. The number of teachers in their early years that also are trying to have a romantic life, it's almost impossible. And sadly, we lose a lot of candidates because they're looking at that thinking, I want more than this. I want to have a relationship and I want to start a family, and I can't do this on top of everything else that I have to do. And that's not a Dartmouth issue. That's a state issue. That's a DESE rule that you have to have your master's within your first 5 years. I think it's too much. Some colleges and universities have put in a 5th year of college and you get your master's, so you come out with your master's degree. And what that does on our side is then you're starting someone at the master's level on the salary scale. So that's a little bit more money. But at least it takes off the burden of them trying to do all of that within their first 5 years. I think it's a lot. When you're a new teacher, especially at the elementary level, in those first 5 years, you may not just be teaching one grade level. In those first 5 years, you may be bounced around to a couple of grade levels, so you're learning new curriculum. It is not easy, and it's hard to maintain that commitment.
Ryan, I know we're running up against it. Do you have any specific things that you want to bring up? Because
No.
I might run a couple of minutes.
I just didn't want to walk out.
Okay, all right. Let me see, so a couple of other things here. The operational assessments. We've got the audit, right? We've got a company that does the
Yes.
budget for the whole town.
Does the audit for the
It
town.
does the audit for the town. I've requested a little bit more detail, I think
Yeah.
on one piece of that audit that would have been helpful to know in relation to our, what do you call them, sewer and water enterprise funds. But Jim, how do you do operational assessments? Obviously, you're looking at these things all the time, but in my profession, we always had, every 5 years or so, brought somebody in to basically hit us with a ruler and say, why are you doing this, why are you doing that? They have a kind of a greater view of the whole operation.
Yeah, we use the town auditors from a financial perspective. We use the town auditors to do our annual Department of Ed end-of-year audit in conjunction with the town. So that's similar. But like, for instance, there's no shortage of oversight from the Department of Ed. For instance, we just did a tiered focus monitoring, what they call it. I know that doesn't mean anything to anybody. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me, to be honest. But it is a every 3-year cycle where they look at our special ed program, and it's quite detailed in terms of policy, procedure, and what we do for kids in special ed. So we just got done with that. We were, we don't have the full report yet, but we were pleased that they told us we're done, and no major findings. So things like that. The Department of Ed, we also have one coming up, procurement related audit from the Department of Ed. So there's a cycle of different Department of Ed related audits that we go through. We also, at the high school level, have an accreditation program
Right.
with NEASC, a New England group, who accredits high schools. So we go through that cyclically every few years as well. So we have a lot of people looking over our
Oversight,
shoulder for
yeah.
sure.
The question though, the audits that I'm hearing are really financial audits.
Not the tiered focus monitoring has a financial component, but that's mostly relating to students and special needs. There's definitely some financial, we have certainly a significant amount of financial related audits. From an educational perspective, our accreditation process and the different Department of Ed visits, they have several different audit sort of programs that they do.
But they're not operationally oriented.
They are. The Department of Ed stuff is mostly operationally, with usually have a small a financial component, but yeah, they're more operationally geared
So they,
in terms
so
of.
would they compare you against other towns and suggest other towns are doing things that you should be doing? Or?
They'd be making sure that we're meeting the state requirements and regulations and that there's plenty of regulations
Would they
for
do
sure.
diagnostics to say how you could meet state regulations?
Yeah, usually, so most of the model for most of these with the Department of Ed is we provide them with information, they come down, audit the information, make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing, and then have a period of response to any findings, and then corrective action plan of how we would correct a finding, and then have a mid-cycle monitoring to make sure that that's still being implemented, and then come back again in a few years. So oddly enough, although the U.S. Department of Ed is like almost no longer in existence, the State Department of Ed doesn't seem to be slowing down. So they're still pretty involved in our daily lives.
All right, I got a couple of specifics left, and then we're going to get into the next meeting in minutes and things like that. Turnbacks. The school department does not have a similar system, I guess, for year end. And the turnbacks are pretty small from the department, which on a pretty good budget, pretty good sized budget. I think how many, what did we get last year? What did we get last year in turnbacks?
Not much.
Not much, couple $1,000, something like that.
$100.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's either genius budgeting or we're spending, we've got some purchase orders going out in April, May, and June. I don't know which one it is, but I would assume that we're looking at numbers at the end of the year. I guess that's one of the questions that I had when we're trying to align these budgets with all other departments. How do we handle funds that were not expended, in the department? You know what I'm
Yeah,
getting at.
I think there's sort of two key factors to talk about with that. I mean, I think, we are trying to do a lot with a relatively, I know, $55 million is a lot of money. I appreciate that. But it's not a lot of money in comparison to what the work that we're actually doing. So when we're, $3,800 per pupil less than other districts, we are getting good bang for our buck here. very good bang for our buck. So I think that's important to remember. But what we do at year end specifically is so Massachusetts general law allows prepayment of special education tuition for the following year. And it also allows prepayment of any services provided by a collaborative. So there are these special education collaborative groups that exist in the state, of which we're a member of two. And you can prepay services. So at the end of the fiscal year, every year for the last 15 years that I've been here, and they were doing it to an extent before that, we use whatever money we have remaining to prepay special ed tuition. So special ed tuition is incredibly volatile. We talked a little bit about the types of things tuition, impact the budget. I mean, one tuition can cost you $300,000. So.
Excuse me, I really have.
Yeah, no, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. So, since one tuition that you didn't know about at the time of budgeting the prior year can cost $300,000. So what we do, we don't have a special education reserve fund. Some communities do. What we do is we prepay the special ed tuition in June or May for the following school year to the extent that we can. And that allows room in the budget to cover an emergency
Outliers. Yeah.
without coming back to the town and either asking town meeting for more money in October or the finance committee for a reserve fund transfer. As long as you continue to fund to the process of prepaying, it has no financial impact. You're prepaying in this year for next year, and then you're doing it again with the same money the following year. So you're just playing the float, like, okay, it's there when we need it. It's there when we need it. Hopefully, we never need it. If we did need it, we would then have created a sort of fiscal cliff in which we then would need to come add it to the next year's budget. So that tuition, rather than going up 9%, would go up, whatever, like, I don't know, who knows? Depends. How much? 30%.
Do you have any examples of surprises that have happened where you've hit that number?
Every single year, something happens.
I will say that there's either students that move into the
Yeah.
district that we didn't know about June 1st, and within the year, things change with a particular student that we realize we can no longer, I'm just thinking of my experience as an educator in town, we can no longer service this child in the regular school, and we need to look for an outside placement and all of those costs that we didn't know about.
And it's not just move-ins. I
Before.
mean, when a student turns 3, so we have to begin to provide services, even preschool age.
Right.
So, it doesn't have to be a move-in from another municipality. It can be a student right here in Dartmouth who now gets to school age and has a significant level of need that we didn't know about until they got to that point.
Till they were 2.9.
Yeah, till they hit their birthday.
I guess, and I'm going way back to and I've used this example with a couple of guys, so I'll bore them with it, but in a parochial school, in a Catholic school in New Bedford, at the end of the year, it never dawned on me why, but in 4th grade, I remember the windows in the 3rd floor being open and the heat pouring through those windows. And years later, I discovered that the reason for that was because the nuns would keep the register on, and we would burn the oil, because the diocese would never give them more oil the next year unless they hit a number. So the bishop was pretty tough on his numbers.
I guess so.
And you'd freeze your tail off if you got a cold May. My concern is that with the numbers being able to internally be able to move those numbers around, and if you have you know, a large surplus, you know, maybe the special ed reserve fund is a good idea. It's almost like an internal specialty fund that you can pull from, you can bring to town meeting, and, you know, the school committee can run with that with what they want, or tell me to, you know, keep it in my hat. But I think that's one of the questions that, well, one of the things that, for me anyway, is illuminated with the difference in budgeting, in the way that the funds are handled.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty
So
tight.
I don't know if it's good or
Yeah,
not.
we're pretty tight for sure.
And again, Jim, I want the people to understand this.
Yep.
This is not an anti-school thing.
Right.
This is, you know, how do we align ourselves to be able to help the school department do the best they absolutely can with the funds that the town has available.
So Jim, when we prepay tuitions, are we locking in to the tuition charge that they,
Sadly, no.
oh, that is sad.
Sadly, we don't
That is
get,
sad.
there's no prepayment discount.
Okay.
So the Department of Ed determines the rate for the new year in the spring. And when they determine that rate, that's the rate that we have to prepay. Yeah, it would be, if we could get a discount,
Sorry, I lived in a
that would be fantastic.
place called Hope.
Yeah.
Let me see, so last one, so I guess the ask, Gary, is if we could bring forward any departments that have operational increases, personnel additions with increases in budget to this committee. You know, start taking a look at those and try and figure out exactly which ones are the outliers. If we can have them come in, we'll get drill down a little bit more on the
Have any.
figures. Go ahead,
We don't have any.
we don't have any.
I'm sorry, our DPW administration is adding DPW business manager. That will be 25% funded by the general fund. Other than that, we have none. We pulled the facilities director position, which was
Yeah.
the other proposed position. So we have no new staff increases.
Yeah, the rest of that would be funded by the
enterprise
funds.
funds, yeah.
Well, what you'll see is typical increases to utilities,
Yeah,
you know, gas, electric, but some of the departments have,
so no outlier operational increase in expense in
No.
any of the other departments.
Other than contractual, so IT, you're seeing some increases based on IT contracts rising at about 5%.
Yeah.
postage in some areas,
Yeah,
but
postage, gas,
All right.
electric, but no operational changes that are
One-
resulting in
I
budget.
forgot this one. You know, one concept to bring public, I think it's an important one, and it goes both ways as far as income and expense, is education, the education budget in the town. The school department is one thing, but what people forget is that the town is also spending quite a bit of money for the folk education, for Bristol Aggie, and also some of the expenses that are paid out of the town budget that are, I don't know if they are or not, but we've got the SROs for the school department that we're paying through, how do we pay through?
That's the police department.
So that's going through the police department. So in my opinion, that should go to the overall, not the school department budget, but the overall concept for the citizens when they think and they look at these expenses of an education expense. We've got SROs in those schools. I think we have three or four?
We have three.
Three?
Yeah.
You know, extremely important to everybody in the town to have those positions available. But they have to be paid for, so they're paid out of the police department budget. We've got liability lines of expense. We've got property casualty insurance that is paid for by the town budget, overall budget for that protect the school department buildings in liability, I believe, right? When it goes to education, and then the assessments, obviously. The assessments for Bristol Aggie and Volk are just, you know, there's no control over that. I can't go to Jim and shake my finger at him and say, why is this
They
going
just
so
send a bill.
high? It's just an impossibility. However, the town has to realize that when we're talking about the budgets, it goes to the overall education of our kids. So it's an expensive gig. Instead of 56 or 60 cents of a dollar that we're spending in this town for a school department, they have to remember that we're probably closer to 72 or 73 cents on a dollar for education alone. And the
Also
rest
the
is-
benefits package too.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Which
right.
is on the town, you
Yeah,
know.
Yeah, the insurance,
Um,
so
But
when we
it might,
talk.
it might be worth having that example of what each department, with all of those pieces, so that people know.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can, for the next
pie.
meeting, we can prepare a spending breakdown of, what, by category. So, total cost of education that the
Right.
town of Dartmouth pays is this, general government, public safety.
And
we
again,
can
it's,
categorize those other,
It's
those fixed
labor
costs.
intensive, they're labor intensive categories, and you can expect a big number for all of those because it's just a big cost of doing business, you know? But that was the last thing I had on there. So, the next meeting, so I think we've got, the fact that we don't have other budgets that have any significant operational outliers in them, I think we'll probably have enough. Gary, you're having your meetings internally. Are you done with all of them now? Do you
Oh,
have
yeah,
it?
we finished those in January.
All right, so we're all done with them. So now we can discuss the overall budget trajectory in the town, ideas to overcome one-time operational budgets, problems with potentially overrides. We can talk about debt exclusions. I think, in my personal opinion, I think we're at a point in this town where we need to address structural deficits. Proposition 2.5 is not sufficient to handle some of the expenses that we're seeing going forward. And you can't go to the well every other year for an operational override. It's just not going to work, and it's been proven through the state. So we need to come up with an idea of exactly how we're going to handle these things going forward. They're tough choices to make, but they're important. We have a fiscal responsibility to every taxpayer, every fee payer, anybody that contributes to the overall balance of our revenue, to spend it wisely, to keep as much pressure as we can, and to save for rainy days, because they come.
I have a question actually for Janine.
Yes,
And really only because Brian has left you. But
I don't want to speak for Brian.
this is a FinCom question. When you get the budgets in from all the departments, and you then know, Gary has said, this is how much with our revenue and our chapter and all this stuff, this is the money we have to balance. How do you go through and make those decisions to balance the budget?
The Finance Committee doesn't actually balance the budget.
Okay?
We look at each budget independently, each department budget, and obviously ask a series of questions like was asked today of Jim, and we did the same thing to poor Jim in a previous meeting. We make suggestions, and we try to just dig into the facts. I mean, we're not the budget balancers of the town. We have a very competent.
So that's when you make the recommendations to town meeting.
Correct, and
Yep.
we write a very detailed letter that typically includes those recommendations and any observations about what's happening currently in the town.
So the finance committee does look at the total budget. Looks at all the expenses, including not just departments, but insurance.
Correct.
All the categories of insurance, all the assessments. So those are all presented to them. We haven't done that yet. We're ready to do that once we can come to an agreement with the schools. And that's what we usually do that in April.
Okay.
This isn't the timeframe. We usually do that in April.
I mean, we have a whole series of questions that get asked each department that we've supplement the munis forms with. Anything from their goals to expectations on staffing, that type of thing, and why they might need that staffing, and obviously that's been addressed already. And the bigger departments come before us. Any department that wants to come to us can, if they choose to, or we could ask to see somebody else, but typically it's schools, DPW, police are the big ones.
And we just met with the library.
Yes, true. Library came in.
All right, last piece of business, we've got minutes from the last meeting that need to be approved.
I have a quorum, so you can approve those.
All right, we'll push.
No.
So
You're not included.
on my
Yeah.
docket from when we originally scheduled meetings, I have next Tuesday as a bag meeting. We had gotten kind of thrown off with the storm. I don't know if you want to push that meeting another week.
Well,
since you
at
had
some point, what I'd also like to do is, I'd like to change the time, at least for one or two of these, so we can invite the public in. Once we get through, I think, the next meeting, maybe at the tail end of that next meeting, we give a certain amount of time for the public to come in. You know, if we're getting that number of hits on YouTube, then maybe we have some people, I know that I've gotten emails,
Yeah.
people that might want to come in to ask some additional questions, or, you know, have an opinion on exactly where these discussions should go. But what are you thinking, Heidi, next Tuesday?
Well, I don't, based on, I don't know if we'll have the collective we.
Yeah.
The answers to the questions that you had on, you know, structural deficits, operational, debt exclude, like what's, I mean, I do think that,
I think we'll be good.
yeah, I think we could show the slide that you did at last school, select board meeting.
Yeah, we can do
For
that,
the
you know.
long-term planning, like what we're looking at for a calendar of potentially going out for debt exclusion.
Oh, yeah.
We can look at that, you know, Gary and I are gonna be giving a general budget presentation at the joint meeting on Monday, so we can kind of review some of that. And then, you know, I think this group really needs to start, probably at that next meeting, digging into
What are we
kind of
seeing?
that main charge of what are the trade-offs gonna be, because, you know, maybe we can find another $100,000 in revenue. I don't think so, I think we're very tight, but maybe we do. It's not gonna fix the $2 million problem that we have. You know, we've reviewed revenues, Gary and I, over and over again. There is no way we can afford the 6.9 or 6.8% increase that the schools are requesting. So it leaves about $1.5 million, $1.6 million that we have a gap. And so I think that's where we need to really start focusing this group. The idea, working with the finance committee, the school committee, and the select board, to recommend, I think, something that is palatable. And maybe that's some additional revenues, some cuts here, some cuts there. But it's, yeah, I mean, it's coming up quick. We're already approaching the end of March.
Right.
We gotta have a budget finalized within the next month, essentially.
The House budget usually is out by now.
Yeah.
We have not seen it, so it's gonna be interesting to see what that does to state aid. Hopefully it stays the same.
Yeah.
You know, but as Cody mentioned, there, you know, as we get closer, we're fine tuning the revenues. Maybe we can come up with something that would work with the schools to, you know, increase that a little bit. But we're still waiting for our state aid. We got our motor vehicle numbers in.
Yeah.
Those are slightly lower than
Excise?
excise tax, slightly lower than last year's commitment, so
Slightly is what?
a couple $100,000.
No, it's not slight.
Well, yeah, it's out of a $5 million
Yeah, I know.
commitment. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then, you know, there's the other things we have to consider. You know, our revenues continue to grow. There's no necessarily doubt about that. It's the rate of growth that is slowing down. You know, we've been saying it for a while, but probably going into some sort of economic downturn here. You see the kind of unrest in the Middle East that has impacts. We were really, this is a budget impact, so I want to mention it. Kathy Stanley, our energy manager, contacted us kind of right after the unrest developed in the Middle East, recognizing that our natural gas contracts for all of our facilities are up in 2027, early 27. We should start looking. And we were able to execute a new natural gas contract with very small increase to all of our buildings in town. The increase is going to be like $10,000 a year, $12,000 a year. In the rates within days after
Days
that,
after that.
This is
are
great.
like
Yeah.
double, if not quadruple.
Yeah, great
So
timing.
we got in right at the, I mean,
Yeah, when it was set, like even on the oil, when it was $70 a barrel, now it jumped up to 90.
Right.
We kind of hit it in that,
like
not that it's oil, but we hit it around
days
that.
ahead of when it shifted.
Yeah.
And, you know, who knows how long that conflict's gonna last and the
Well,
impact.
you know,
So-
Cody, that's a great example of keeping pressure on current expense. You know, things that people don't normally see, and, with an overarching theme of, we may have a problem going into next fiscal year with the state, with road, Chapter 90, Chapter 70 money, all of it. When the governor comes out and starts asking, or allowing the towns to charge extra for excise and this and that, that is a prelude to a problem. So,
And then there's also, I think, one of the biggest things, it remains unseen, is we've mentioned before, there is potentially, the revenues for the state in the current fiscal year aren't keeping up. Now, there's a potential ballot initiative to reduce the state income tax
Okay.
to 4%.
Yeah.
If that happens,
Catastrophic.
that is going to have a direct impact. We will see cuts at our to local aid, no doubt.
It could be mid, I mean, we still have
Be mid-year.
3-4 months left.
yeah.
Yeah, so we may see mid-year cuts this year, which we've built a conservative financial system so we can weather some of those cuts. But if it continues into '27, with potentially a decrease in the state income tax.
Well, here's a good point. You mentioned the word conservative. Yes, the finances and the way that we deal with finances in this town is conservative. And, there are certain people in town that will bring you right to the edge of that number. Revenue in, revenue out. You cannot possibly run a budget this size when you're revenue in, revenue out. It's impossible. There are too many things that come up during the year that will throw you right backwards. We have, in the backdrop, we have a bond rating in this town that is superior to many towns and cities and towns in the Commonwealth. We need to keep that because, as a backdrop again, we're going to be looking to fund some of the critical, very critical capital projects in this town. The only way you're going to be able to do that effectively and efficiently is to try and keep your bond rating as high as it is right now in the town. And you have to be
And the
conservative.
value of that money going forward, if you looked at the difference between a 3% bond rating and a 5%,
Right.
is millions
Millions.
millions upon
Yeah.
millions of dollars.
Millions on a
That need to be
$150 million school project.
Yeah, so one thing that everyone has to be cognizant of, and you're doing a good job of keeping those numbers in line. We'll push the minutes. Any other questions, concerns, topics? Jim, thank you very much. I
Can we
appreciate
meet-
it.
Appreciate it. Appreciate
So
your time.
are we meeting next week?
We'll meet
Can we
next week.
still do that?
Yeah, we can
Okay,
do
so
that.
let's,
Tuesdays.
Tuesday the 24th.
Yep,
That's as far as we went.
yeah.
The following meeting, because we're every 2 weeks, would be the same day as the election,
No, it's
which
not
is
gonna
not a
work.
good day. So should we go to April 14th? Or is that when you'd like to change the time?
The following meeting, I'd like to change the time.
So let's just stick with
let's leave-
next week.
Yeah, let's leave it for next week, and then we'll
And we
come
can
up with a couple
discuss
of
it.
dates we'll bring up at that meeting, and we'll be ready to
When
go.
you say change
24th.
the time, are you thinking evening?
I'm not thinking evening, I'm thinking maybe
Later in the day?
later afternoon, yeah. That'll give
Have a
some people an opportunity to,
No, I understand the why, just
yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
figure out what
Yeah, I think
that
maybe
time
later in the afternoon. Maybe
Um,
maybe a 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
something like that.
I think that was Chris Oliver had said, one side or the other.
Yeah.
To not impact his workday.
Right.
24th.
Okay,
And
I have a lot of the other meetings, I've been going to ZBA and some others, so I know which.
Okay, great, great.
I have them on my calendar, so when we go for.
So 8 o'clock?
I'll let you know if this
We're gonna
room's
say
gonna be.
8 o'clock next
busy.
Tuesday. 8 o'clock next Tuesday. All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Any motions?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this session of BAG.
Motion
Second.
made, seconded, all
I think
in
it's
favor?
us.
Aye.
Yes.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, Jim. Thank you. Appreciate it.